Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. This is the NFL Playoff Recap brought to you by the Vizio P-Series 4K Ultra HD Smart TVs. The Seattle Seahawks just beat up on the Carolina Panthers. It was a close game for a little bit. 31-17 was the final score. By the way, Jason Rubin, J.R. Jackson, and joining us from Columbus, Ohio, our good friend Taylor Jones. Taylor, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great. How are you all?
Great. So the Panthers and the Seahawks was not nearly as exciting of a game, but still a lot went on. The first thing that needs to be mentioned, and I saw this stat at the bottom at the end of the game when they're interviewing Cam Chancellor, the Seahawks defense have not allowed a point in the fourth quarter in the last 7 games. We've been talking about their defense heating up. They're getting hot.
I mentioned this during as that game went, because as you mentioned, we were talking about how the game was closer than many thought. Mm-hmm. You were saying how everyone was talking about how this game was going to be a runaway and a blowout from the beginning. They're playing in Seattle. Oh my God, what are they going to happen? So then, as it was stayed close, there was a few surprises. Mm-hmm. But that's what happens with great defenses. They play the whole game and they just lean on you. And you look up and you're down by 14 points, 21 points. Next thing you know, and you don't know what just happened to you. And that's the pedigree of such a good defense. They just keep playing. And yeah, they'll make plays. Yeah, you'll punt and be like, oh, we're still in this. But eventually, something like Cam Chancellor happens.
It's going to happen. Taylor, so take us through what your thoughts, the notes that you had throughout the game. What did you like about the Seattle defense? Did you think that Cam Newton and the Panthers really had a chance in the second half?
Yeah, well, let me tell you what I thought the difference was in the entire game. It's a stat. It's actually a synthetic stat that Brian Billick, the former Super Bowl winning head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, have come to call the toxic differential. It's a synthesis of the turnover differential and the big play differential. Now, what we do is we add up how many turnovers you get versus how many you give away, and then add or subtract that into how many explosive plays you earn versus how many you give up. If you look at just the turnover differential, if you're +2, you win 80% of the time. If you look at just the explosive play differential, if you're +2 in that, you win 80% of the time, give or take a little bit. If you're +2 in the toxic differential, the combination of the two, you win 95% of the time. In this game, Seattle was +8, obviously Carolina -8. So that's the difference to me. It's not just about how much you turn the ball over. You also have to get the plays down the field. Seattle was able to do both.
No. So you have you talked about the turnover differential and the big play differential. Explain the toxic. You said the toxic play differential?
The toxic is a synthetic stat that combines both. So
okay.
in this game, let me make sure I got the numbers right. Seattle had 3 takeaways, therefore Carolina had 3 giveaways. That gives Carolina a -3 turnover differential, right. Seattle a +3. Right. On the explosive plays, we'll identify explosive plays as 20 yards or more. Seattle had 7, Carolina just had 2. So that's a +5 in Seattle's
right.
favor. You add that into the +3 of the turnover differential, they're +8 on the game. And I told you before, +2 means 95% chance of a win probability there. So +8 is obviously pretty good.
Yeah, that's a fantastic stat that we're using for this. And explosive is a fantastic way to put the Seattle defense as it's come into the season, at the end of the season, I should say. But, I mean, Russell Wilson, again, I always look at Russell Wilson, and he gets compared to so many quarterbacks for being, smart. He doesn't make mistakes. Mm-hmm. He's efficient with the ball. 250-plus yards of throwing in the air. I know he had 3 touchdowns. With Russell Wilson going forward, it doesn't seem like it has to rely solely on the Seattle defense. He obviously can make explosive plays. And again, the road to the Super Bowl is paved through
you know what?
Seattle.
We just spoke about this in the early game with Tom Brady and the Patriots, and how early in his career he had such a great defense. I don't think, of course, not as good as the Seattle defense, but he had a good defense that he didn't have to do everything, and which we were talking about how it solidifies his legacy, and that he has to do more now, and he has to win by 4 points, but 35 points he has to put up. Russell Westbrook, not Russell, I'm sorry. I'm thinking basketball now. Russell Wilson, we got Russell W's everywhere.
Yeah, it's true.
Russell Wilson, you think about that game, and he put his imprint on it, but you're not thinking about him, you know? But he had a great game, and he makes timely passes. He places them perfectly, and he moves and buys time in the pocket, and he runs. He does all these things that are spectacular, yet you still don't think about that primarily when you watch this game. It's amazing. It's a luxury to have such a defense like that.
It really
and you think, too, about what Seattle has done as far as taking away some of his options. They send Percy Harvin in New York, Sidney Rice retires. This guy's Zach Miller is out for the year with an injury. This guy's best offensive weapons have been taken out of the game, and he continues to produce. I think he's one of the great young quarterbacks in this game, and he's going to have a lot of staying power in this league.
Yeah, he's a competitor. He's also it's only other small quarterback in the league is Drew Brees. Actually, Johnny Manziel fits that mold too, but obviously there's a major difference between the Drew Breeses, Russell Wilsons, and then of course the Johnny Footballs. But again, like you just mentioned, Taylor, Doug Baldwin though has obviously stepped up, and Javon Curse has stepped up to become at least a threat for Russell Wilson to use on the offensive side. But of course, when we look at Seattle, we're going to be talking about their defense, and they're going to be considered one of the better defenses to ever exist.
Actually, I mean, we have Taylor as a former tight end.
Absolutely.
What is it that these guys like Olsen couldn't see through a defense like that? The type of things that they were throwing at him, I'm not sure how specific you were looking at. I'm throwing you a curveball here. How specific what he has to see and what Cam Newton has to see to try and get through this type of defense that kind of made it impenetrable at times.
Well, here's the thing that Seattle does. You always know, at least for the most part, that Richard Sherman's going to be on the right side of the field, locking down whatever receiver you're sitting over there. Earl Thomas is always going to be roaming the back half, the highest paid safety in the game. I think the biggest key with this defense is you have to locate where Cam Chancellor is. He could be the seventh man in the box. He could be the eighth man in the box. He could be rushing off the edge. He could be playing deep man. He could be playing man up in your slot receiver. You have to identify him. He is the X factor for this defense. I know that's going to be the sexy thing to say after this game with the athleticism that he showed, but all year, actually, his entire career, he's been the difference maker for this defense. He's the tone setter. Like I said, he is the person you identify when you walk up to the line of scrimmage and say, there's Cam Chancellor. We're either going to go away from him or go towards him, but I need to know exactly where he is. He's
basically a bigger, I was making this comparison. I'm not sure if it's even accurate, but he's a bigger Troy Polamalu. And with a guy like Pete Carroll, who's a defensive-minded coach, I'm a Trojan, so I know all about Pete. So when Pete had Troy at SC, I mean, you use the guy anywhere. He can be a linebacker, and he's shorter. He's a linebacker, and of course, as a safety, and he was everywhere on the field. And now he has the luxury of Cam Chancellor to put him anywhere he wants, and he's bigger.
He's a stretch defensive back. I mean, we see it in basketball. We have the stretch fours, and of course, but keeping it to the football side of things. And Cam Chancellor did have the play of the game. I mean, when you intercept, he jumped that ball, and he jumped it perfectly. And when you have that type of play, and you get to look back and have nobody in front of you and nobody behind you, you get to high-step your way into the end zone because you deserve to. And that obviously was the clinching, sealing moment for Seattle, and it was loud. My God, you listen to that stadium, you can hear it through the TV. It obviously has an effect. I saw when we were watching this game, Cam Newton had to go up to literally get into the ear of his center and his offensive line at the line of scrimmage to get his play across. So that leaves either Green Bay or Dallas to go into Seattle next week. Obviously, Tony Romo and Aaron Rodgers are better quarterbacks than that of Cam Newton. They've proved that Aaron Rodgers has proved that before. Tony Romo this year has been fantastic. Do you think either of those two quarterbacks can get the best of Seattle, or is Seattle going to be going back to another Super Bowl? I'm asking Taylor, sorry.
Oh, yes,
I think the way it's set up right now, Dallas probably has a better chance to go into Seattle and win simply because of their running game. When you have an option in DeMarco Murray to actually go in there and set the tone, we talked about the strength of this Seattle defense being in the back half. The weakness is this defensive line. They have a pretty decent linebacking group, pretty athletic, can run sideline to sideline. But if you go vertical, north and south, run the ball between the tackles, that's their weakness. And I think Dallas, although Eddie Lacy can be a pretty physical runner himself, but Dallas's offensive line is going to give DeMarco Murray some lanes. And I think that's going to be the team that's going to be more likely to go to Seattle and upset them at home on the way to the Super Bowl.
It's going to be an interesting game. JR, any thoughts on Dallas or Green Bay going into Seattle next week?
The X factor is number 12's calf.
Yeah.
If the calf is there, it's bad news for Dallas.
That's true.
That's the only thing that can stop him.
All right, guys, that was the NFL playoff recap brought to you by Vizio and their P-Series 4K Ultra HD Smart TVs. Make sure to check the description box below for any information regarding how to get one of these awesome Vizio TVs. And we look forward to the NFC and AFC Championship game. We have 2 more games. We have 2 more. We're already way ahead of ourselves.
Awesome.
We have the divisional round tomorrow. Colts, Broncos, Packers, Cowboys. Some great games coming. There'll be more clips from TYT Sports coming to you on Monday morning. Taylor, thank you so much for coming in. We look forward to having you on next time. JR, as always, thank you. And don't forget to subscribe, guys, and we'll see you Monday.